RACERRRZ Studios presents 10 gigabit Ethernet going into the HP Z420. We're going to go for really fast data transfer between hard drives and SSDs and even NVMe's. But to begin with, we have to check out our hardware that we need to achieve this. Well, the first one there is the Ubiquiti Unifi Flex-XG network switch, really powerful. We also need the Intel X540-T2 network interface card. In fact, two of them, which is going to go on two different machines, but more on that later. But for now, get ready for some serious performance. RACERRRZ Studios presents the HP Z420 and the Intel 10 gigabit Ethernet upgrade. Let's quickly have a look at our NAS build. You may have seen this in a previous video. There it is. Now, right now, we're going to throw in the X540-T2 NIC. And this is going to help us to ascertain those high speeds. Now check out the Z420 motherboard. There are several slots we can go for. I'm going to put this into slot 2 to give us the maximum possible bandwidth. Let's check out this network card. Absolute work of art there. Check that out. Let's quickly get this out of the box and unpackaged. Shouldn't take too long. Pretty proficient at opening these. Now, definite bonus on this particular model, we have two RJ45s. Giving us quite a decent amount of bandwidth. We do have a nice thermal heatsink on there as well, which should help with thermal control. But I have in the future figured out that we don't actually have a thermal sensor on this, which is a little disappointing. It would have been nice to actually monitor the temperature. But other than that, this is a very well equipped card. We do have quite a lot of potential, and definitely check out the slot size there as well. Best to run this on a 8-time slot. Okay, so let's see if we can fit this into slot 2. Come with me on this journey while we quickly figure out if we can get this machine to get up to 10 gigabits. Well, there's our port ready to go, and definitely a good port given the size of this network adapter as well. Now have a quick check there of the speeds on each of these lanes. Very important to go for the full bandwidth. We do have two RJ45s on there. We do want to be able to use the full capacity of the card. Okay, upgrade complete, video done. No, not quite. You know there's always going to be more. Yeah, there's definitely going to be more. What's next? Well, if you did see the previous video, you might have noticed that we had a bit of a GPU problem. Now, before we get there, let's quickly check out our NVMe adapter, and that's also been featured in a previous video. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. We actually gave this adapter a really cool cooling process, but a thermally conductive silicone. But here's this graphics card upgrade. Now, the previous one had what I assume was a capacitor that may have imploded. Gave a little bit of a funny signal on boot, so we've replaced it. The Quadro K2200. Very, very capable. Check that out. 4 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory, so pretty capable. But again, this is a NAS build, so we're not looking for any of those RTX, should we say 4090s. We don't need it on our NAS build, but nonetheless, we do have a fairly capable graphics unit in here should we need to output some graphics. This particular machine is equipped with Windows 10 as well as TrueNAS, mostly running TrueNAS, but yes, do operating system. Now the next one here is really cool. This is the H240 host bus adapter, HBA, really powerful, and it's another dual port, allowing us to run one mini SAS cable, which is going to allow us to equip 4 SATA hard drives to one of those ports. That's just incredible. Gives us the ability to expand available slots, and let's check out this cable in a bit more detail. So take note, this is compatible with both SATA and SAS formats, giving you the ability to run any hard drive that you may see fit. Let's quickly throw that in there, and let's get our NVMe adapter back in as well. That was almost too easy. Okay, well, I think that ends that part. Hardware installation complete. There's only one logical thing that we could do next. You're probably thinking it as well. We need to set up our switch. Now, definitely check out a related video if you haven't yet, but this one's going to be in a slight bit more detail. Now, the first thing we need to do is get our driver in for our X540-T2. Now, this one doesn't seem to install automatically, or at least not on Windows 10 in my application, so I had to hunt for the driver. So keep that in mind, easy to find on Intel's website, or a quick Google search, or do we say Bing search? Depends which browser you're using at the moment. Maybe it's Bing with its AI. It's fascinating. Okay, so let's go for the next step, which is install Unifi Network Controller. Now this is critical for your network switch, particularly if you've got the Unifi Flex-XG switch, to actually allow it to detect correctly. Without it, it doesn't actually adopt. That's right, to figure that out the hard way. So very important, you need to get the software installed. This is the Unifi Network application. Once you've launched that out, it should pop up in a browser. Quickly create your account, and definitely make sure this is on your machine, which is going to be running, or at least using, the switch's capability. It does have to be connected to the 1 gigabit management port as well. Very important, so that's the PoE port. There's only one of them on this particular switch. The other 4 are the 10 gigabit switches. So I guess you want to hook that up to a secondary port if you have such a port on your machine. Something like the HP Z840 is perfect because it does have 2 1 gigabit ports on the motherboard, and obviously now it's got 2 10 gigabit ports, and the Z420 has 1 gigabit port, so that's perfect. Now here we go, we got our interface set up. You can see we've actually detected 3 different setups here. The TrueNAS is going to be our Z420. We've got our desktop, which is the Z840, and down the bottom a little bit of a server. More on that in a future video, but let's do a quick speed test. iPerf 3, great for a quick command line based speed test. Let's check out what is going on. Now in terms of setting this up, you've got your client command, which is iPerf 3, and definitely check out the -C, or that's for client, and -S for your main portal. Now you do have to, for the client at least, input the IP, but in terms of the Z420, I can do this on TrueNAS shell, and very easy. You just input the server detail, and then it actually sets that up for us. Now we can check our speed. So it's saying around 5.3 gigabits per second. That's not quite the 10 gigabits we were hoping for. Definitely need to figure out why it's half of what we would have wanted, but nonetheless, that's a pretty solid amount of performance. Definitely see if we can improve on that in the future as well. But for now, that's looking pretty exceptional. Now, if your speed is low, it could be the cables, it could be the network settings. Jumbo packets was really important. It could also be hardware. Let's check out TrueNAS in a bit more detail here as well. Quickly scanning in, we can see our Z420, 16 gig of memory. Could well be that. Maybe it's worth upgrading to more memory. I'll definitely test that out in a future video. Still stay tuned for a TrueNAS update. I haven't quite got around to this, but here it is, the shell. All we have to do is enter in our quick command, our command line. Once we're in there, we are able to initiate this entire process. So pretty straightforward, and again, you will need to know the IP address of your machine in order to correctly set this up. Now, once we run our commands, we should see some sort of transfer going through that network, and right now we are seeing around 5.3 gigabits per second, or if you check out the converted unit there, we also have megabytes, which would be nice to see as well. But right now, we're not quite getting the speeds that we would desire, so about half the speed that we would want, and there could be a number of things to test. So Ethernet cable would be the most logical. You can also run the test in reverse, just by adding the command -R at the end of your command line, which will reverse the direction, which is great, so we can test our flow in both directions. And I believe we're getting around 6 gigabits in the reverse direction, which is great. So that would be from our server to the Z840. So pretty solid speeds, definite room for improvement. The key thing here is going to be to find a way to actually extract a little bit more performance. The most logical way would be NVMe, but we'll look into that in a future video. We'll try and install a bit of a dedicated system. Now you can also check out your speeds in the Unifi app as well, although I did find this lags out a little bit and doesn't quite give you live data, so definitely use, if you're on Windows at least, Windows 10, go for Task Manager. Very reliable and real-time readouts, but still very handy. The Unifi software gives us a very nice ability to manage not just the data throughput, but we can also set up lots of filtering, and we can even manage every individual port right down to our specific needs or specifications. That does get horrendously complicated very quickly, but if you are knowledgeable on the topic, very easy. The software itself is very well laid out, and as you can tell here, scanning through some of the menus, it's quite straightforward to navigate and lots of features. But overall, very well set up right out of the box. Key thing was getting the software installed, then you're good to go. But we'll definitely go through this in a bit more detail. If you would like more detail, let me know. You can always go through and do a dedicated review on the particular software. But right now, just checking our speeds, making sure that everything's running okay, and as far as I can tell, we're getting some pretty solid speeds, and that's looking rather robust. Now, what else can we look for in this particular platform? Well, another key consideration is going to be when you have multiple of these particular switches and perhaps multiple of your network adapters, get a speed bottleneck. Well, I'm going to say no, we should be okay, but definitely worth checking out the max bandwidth on the switch, as well as your two machines that are communicating with each other. Very important, otherwise you could just run into some bottlenecks, which wouldn't be ideal. Okay, right now running iPerf 3, doing a quick scan through to see how the performance is going. Now I do need to do some testing here. I suspect an additional network cable could be of use. We do have the 2 ports there as well right now, only occupying one of them. And am using a CAT6A cable for communication between the Z840 and the switch, as well as the switch back to the Z420. So hopefully that's authentic Cat6 cable, otherwise there might be a little bit of interference, so I may well have to check that out to see if that's part of the problem here. That's looking pretty reasonable, scanning through some of the additional settings here within our Unifi Manager, Network Manager, and quite a lot of additional settings that we could activate. Now, out of all the settings, that was the most critical to attain these at least raised speeds. Initially, I only obtained like 1.3 gigabits per second, so I had to activate jumbo packets. Definitely keep an eye out for that as well. Very important setting. Now, on the TrueNAS server, that wasn't needed. It automatically negotiated that, but I did have to change it on the Z840, which is relatively straightforward. You just have to go into your main operating system settings and do a quick change. Definitely check out how to do that. If you want more detail, let me know as well, but fairly straightforward. We'll put some of the instructions up. Now, what else do we have in our menu? Well, lots of interesting things here, including things like mixing up the appearance of your browser. And we also have things like system update, and take note there, firmware update. It's going to be relatively important to get your switch to run in optimal condition. But in a nutshell, that's it. We now have 10 gigabit Ethernet. We have a very simple home network, and apparently very nearly 10 gigabit speeds. Well, not yet, but we'll work on it. Now, if you have any other requests for future videos, feel free to let me know in the comments. If you have a suggestion for improvement on the 10 gigabit Ethernet speeds, leave them in the comments. I'm sure someone else will benefit from that as well, because in the quest of performance, we're all hunting for that little bit of extra speed. Hopefully that gets things to run slightly more efficiently, but definitely looking like we are on a 10 gigabit connection. We just got to find a way to extract maximum performance. Hopefully enjoyed that video. Still there? Okay, bonus footage. Future video. HP Z420 case swap into the Fractal Define 7XL. Lots of hard drives for that one. Another future video. HP Z240 user overview. And another future video. Workstation meets UPS. Oh wow, that's running without any troubles. That's pretty cool, even though the power's out. Cool. You may also be interested in. I can also recommend this one. RACERRRZ Studios presented. RACERRRZ signing off here. I'll see you on the next video.